Hailing from the great cold state of Alaska, I am the Frozen Gamer, and tonight I want to talk to you guys about some stuff that's coming up with E3. It's crazy to think that we are less than a week away from everything starting, at least if you count the stuff that's technically not part of E3 but takes place the weekend before. So next Saturday, the 9th, is actually when we have EA's thing going on, and technically it's not actually like part of E3 proper, but it's still, as far as I'm concerned, the beginning of E3. So with that being said, let's get into a topic that I think is worth discussing, and that is who has something to prove this E3? And that's a really interesting question. I feel like if we're just talking about the big three, we're not even going to worry about third parties, because the reality is that third parties, I think is just a whole different discussion, and it's probably not something I'm going to get into so much. But with the big three, with Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, the two companies that I think really have the most to prove are Nintendo and Microsoft. Now, I'm going to start off with Microsoft, and I want to make it clear, I'm not hating on Microsoft, on Xbox, or anything. Any of you who've been listening to most of my stuff know that I'm not an Xbox gamer. I kind of just missed the boat on it, and by the time I got to a point where I could potentially have gotten into it, I already had so many games and game systems that I just didn't really find a compelling reason to jump in. And now with the current state of Xbox, I feel even more so that I just don't really have a reason. So, for me personally, the reason why Microsoft has the most to prove is because of the fact that there's just nothing that makes me want the system. And for a lot of people, including diehard Xbox fans, there's not enough right now. There's not enough exclusives coming. There's great third-party support, obviously. Xbox Live is amazing. I mean, there's so many great things about the system, but the lack of first-party titles, the lack of true exclusives, really is hurting the system. I mean, there's a reason why it's so far behind PlayStation right now. And I have to say that I really feel like this is a make-or-break E3 for Microsoft. And yeah, technically, they could do other things, but considering the fact that E3 always seems to be where they do their biggest blowout each year, I really feel like this is the make or break for them. They need to announce some killer apps, some things that are really going to drive customers back to them. Because while the amount of consoles they've sold is nothing to, be ashamed of, it's still far, far below PlayStation. And I really feel like that's a problem. I mean, they've gotten to a point where their biggest exclusives have just not done very well, like Sea of Thieves. Yes, it's technically sold a lot of people have played it, but it's very bare bones. There's just not a lot to the game, and a lot of people got bored of it very quickly, which I think is unfortunate, because I actually thought the game looked really cool, and if I was someone who actually had the time and everything to play something like that, I could potentially be interested. But the other thing is that, considering the fact that every single one of their new games so far has been both Xbox One and Windows 10, it's, for those of us who have a good enough PC to play some of these games, it's kind of hard to be motivated to get the Xbox unless you're already a fan of the brand. And, I mean, for me, I just feel like it's too late for me personally. And that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed some of the things that I've seen from them. I mean, I actually thought last year's conference was better from Xbox than it was from Sony. I was extremely underwhelmed with Sony. Xbox, I felt like it actually had some stuff I was like, oh, that looks cool. Now, I will say that there's none of the games that I ended up actually buying on PC, more just because I was already inundated with a ton of games to play, and There's a bunch of them I didn't even get to play last year that came out. I mean, I'm just starting to catch up with some of the 2017 games. Right now, I'm working on Horizon Zero Dawn. And, before that, I was playing games like, I've been working on Skyrim, which, I know technically is 2011 or 2016 game, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's just like, there's so many games from last year that I never got around to, and Microsoft's games just have probably the lowest appeal for me personally. And I just don't know. It's really hard to say exactly whether or not there's anything that would ever bring me to Xbox, but I think that just because of the state I'm in, the fact that I have missed the both the original Xbox and the 360, and anything that's really been worth playing is something that I can also get on PC for the most part. It's just been really hard for me to be interested. However, I still think that it's possible that they could come out of this. I mean, the Xbox One isn't doing bad. It's just not doing very well anymore. And, Nintendo, you look at the Wii U. The Wii U was an utter failure in terms of sales, and yet look at where they're at with the Switch now. The Switch is doing extremely well, and we just got that announcement of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which, even though there's kind of a mixed reaction from some people, I think overall it's still going to do extremely well. And I have a feeling that the Switch is going to be a huge seller this holiday season just because of that. Plus, Zelda, Mario, Smash Brothers, everything else that is either already there or is already confirmed for 2018. And we don't even know about everything that's coming. There's probably still going to be some things that will be announced later. The fact that Fortnite has essentially been confirmed for the Switch is definitely going to help as well, even though it's not necessarily... I'm not sure how much of a system seller it will be, just because the fact that you can already get Fortnite on smartphones and the like. But, at the same time, you think about it, buying a Switch and doing the free-to-play version of Fortnite, the Battle Royale mode, it's cheaper than a smartphone, most of the time, or at least a smartphone that can actually run Fortnite. Whether or not that's 100% true, I don't know for sure, because I don't know what the specs are that are required. But either way, we'll see what happens with this. But I do think that Microsoft really has to do something to drive interest in sales again. I don't think they're going to announce the new console yet. I think that they're just not to that point. But, we'll have to see what happens. There have been some rumors going around about what it is that Microsoft plans to show at E3, including, I think it was 3 different Gears of War games, with being a standard one, and then a real-time strategy or something to that effect, and then also a Battle Royale type game, and we'll see if that's true. To me, it sounds a little iffy. It seems more likely that at least 2 of those would be together. It's possible that they could have the base game and then just have the Battle Royale tacked on. The RTS, I guess I could see that happening, and I could see how that would work. But, once again, it's one of those things where we have to see what it looks like, get an idea of it, and see, what's actually coming this year. Because if they don't bring at least 1 or 2 exclusives this year that are significant enough to drive more sales, it's going to be really, really tough for them, I think, at this point, because the third-party games are just, they're not enough. Because if you can go to PlayStation and get all of the third-party games, plus all these great first-party games, then more people probably will go that direction, unless they're just big Xbox fans. Now, getting to Nintendo, what it is that they have to prove this year, well, right now, we're not entirely sure what all Nintendo has going on for the Switch in 2018. It's definitely looking a lot better than it was at the beginning of the year. We know for a fact, as far as big games go, we have both Super Smash Brothers and the new Pokemon games, which I mean, those two in and of themselves, especially Pokemon, are going to be humongous sellers. And if if Smash Brothers has GameCube controller support, that's going to really help them. But, you know, there's a lot to be seen with that at this point. What I also think, though, is that, I mean, we know that there's going to be a Fire Emblem game this year, or at least that's what they had said last time they had talked about it. And so that's undoubtedly going to get shown this year. And it will drive sales for some units. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as big as even Smash Brothers, which I believe Smash Brothers is the smaller between that and Pokemon. I think Smash Brothers will sell less. But I think that the other thing is that Nintendo has to keep the momentum going. And while Pokemon is undoubtedly going to be a big seller and it's going to really, really help the system, and same with Smash Brothers, I still feel like they need some more aces in the hole. And yeah, I'm not saying that I'm not excited about some of these games that are coming to Switch. I mean, there are definitely some that I'm like, absolutely, I want to buy it day one. But then there's others where I'm just kind of like, I could wait if I have to. Because I don't have the time for everything, and there's still stuff I want to play from last year. So, it's just one of those things where we're going to have to kind of wait and see. But I do think the Switch has less to prove than Xbox, just because of the fact that it's already selling well, and we know that there are at least 2 really big games coming this year, maybe more, and there's undoubtedly going to be more reveals as well. Especially if we see something like Animal Crossing, which is actually a surprisingly really big seller, or, you know, like a new Mario Party. I mean, there could be any number of different things that will definitely help the Switch, but I have to say that between that and Xbox has a lot more to prove. And I want to state this once again, just being absolutely clear. I'm not hating on Xbox. I actually think it's a pretty cool system. I really like a lot of things about it. I love the controller on the Xbox One. I think it's a huge improvement over the 360 controller, which I already really liked, apart from the D-pad, which is terrible. But, you know, even with that being said, and, you know, even with Xbox One X currently being the most powerful console in the market, there's still a lot of problems, just in terms of software. And, you know, Crackdown 3, kind of going back to them a little bit, that's something else that we really need to see something real out of it. We need to know that the game is actually coming. It's a game that I thought sounded really cool, but I also would buy it on PC if I was going to buy it. So, yeah. It's one of those things where we just have to wait and see what happens. And I really hope that both Microsoft and Nintendo will come out swinging on their conferences, and really have a lot to show us. I hope, especially for Microsoft, I want them to do well, because more competition is what Sony needs right now, because Sony's kind of resting on their laurels a little bit more. And getting into Sony just a little bit here, the only reason why I think Sony doesn't have so much to prove is just because of the fact that they've already done extremely well. I mean, I seem to remember that their sales figures latest were like 80 million, or at least 80 million shipped. And that's insane. I mean, that's really, really well that it's selling. And so, technically, they don't really have anything to prove at this point. Which, to me, is why I think they're kind of being a little more, lazy, maybe? I don't know if lazy is the right word. But, either way, it's something where I definitely feel like where Sony's not putting in the extra amount of effort. And I'm sure that they'll have some good stuff to show at their conference this year. I'm sure that we'll actually end up walking away more impressed than we think. But I don't feel like, even with probably end up being underwhelmed with their conference this year, I don't feel like they need to do well. I feel like they just kind of resting on the fact that, yeah, they have some great exclusives and they have a bunch of systems already out there, so they're good to go. But anyway, what are your guys' thoughts? Who do you think has the most to prove at E3 this year? Be sure to leave some comments down below, and until next time, this has been The Frozen Gamer, and I'll talk to you later.